So we have myself, Cameron, we have Mark, my co-host, and we have Nico. Nico, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about who you are and why you're so amazing to be talking about AI.
I'm very humbled by that. I don't know about like amazing to be talking about AI, but I work as a RevOps strategist for New Breed and have been dabbling in HubSpot for the last going on 5 years now, and just love what I do and have always loved sci-fi and tech and computers, and ever since like Blade Runner, right, the original. And you got that plus Philip K. Dick plus like all of these expansions over time. And then you got Ready Player One. Like my brain is very much like simulation theory, computer, AI related. Want to see AGI like sometime soon. And so that's where all this comes from, is knowing that Google and IBM have been sitting on this stuff for a decade, but then OpenAI just like with no qualms whatsoever just threw this right out into the public, just created this huge explosion. So it was like, oh, cool. Now the rest of the world is ready to talk about this. So I don't just have to, it's not just me talking to my wife and bugging her about it all the time. Now I can actually have open conversations with people. Yeah, it's definitely made me get more involved where I can.
Yeah, I think like one of the really cool things when it comes to AI is it went from being a very specialty niche thing that people would focus on, right? So you didn't have anybody and everybody using AI to do their homework, but now it's something that is widely accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the journey for you when it came to the general interest in the sci-fi, but then really diving in and finding practical use for artificial intelligence?
For me, oddly enough, the beginning of it was writing a book. Something that I've always wanted to do for a very long time, and you just don't have the time. But now I have this assistant that can churn out content at a blazing speed, and all I have to do is edit. So that was the very first thing I did, was I actually combined GPT with Midjourney, and I used Midjourney to create an entire storyboard for this book, and then was able to use that as visual reference to give GPT the cues of, okay, this is what's going to happen in this scene or that scene. And haven't it's not finished yet. It's turning into something of a saga, but it's still, that was like the dipping my toe in the water in terms of like how much I'm going to be using this. And from there, it turned into, okay, well, now that I can generate content, let's start doing that for social. And now that I can do that for social, let me start doing it for like other applications. And then started finding use cases from other people for writing grants or writing proposals or all different types of content. So got into prompt engineering and building conversations that were essentially like custom GPTs. They had those personas essentially. So got into building those out and sharing those with people. And it's just going nuts from there. I've known for a long time now that every iteration of what is happening is going to subvert the one that came before it, right? Prompt engineering was like really important until custom GPTs came along. And now custom GPTs are really important. Prompt engineering is at the background. Yeah, just staying at the forefront from beginning to end and looking forward to where this stuff is going.
So
ChatGPT kind of broke onto the scene. What was it? About a year ago, right? Around November of last year. Was that about right? So
Yes, I
how
think we're four
soon
days off
before
from
or
the
after?
anniversary.
Right. So how soon around that time did you start this project with the book and Midjourney? Was it like right around then, or is it a more recent thing?
It started just manual, right? Just with Word doc, and then went between that with Midjourney when Midjourney 2 was out. And that was like really struggle back and forth. And then 3 was a little bit better. And then a friend of mine turned me on to GPT and was like, hey, there's this cool open source thing if you ever get into hub type stuff, which I wasn't, right? And I'm not really a programmer, don't really know that much. I know
So
a
that was
lot
only with the
more now.
API. That was before ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, so that was before there was actually like a web interface for it.
Right.
And then yeah, the web interface exploded. No, it was yeah, November 28th or 29th last year. Yeah, we just passed the anniversary for that. And from then till now, it's exactly what I said. At the beginning of this year or towards the end of last year, I made a statement that the truth was dead. And it's just been getting like truer, that's a thing, truer ever since then. So yeah, it's been exciting. And yeah, working with it from then to now, it's a completely different system from what it was when I first started using it to what it is now. It's the same with generative art programs. And when I say completely different, I don't necessarily mean a 180, but it's real close. And it's only been a year. So it's this unmeasurable exponential jump within a measurable amount of time.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And I think it was Steve Jobs or someone attributed to him this idea that like good products, good software is akin to magic. That when you see it in action, there's like this experience of it's like magic. I'm sure I'm butchering it, but something like that. And that is the exact experience I had initially with ChatGPT and continue to have. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Colin.
No, so I was going to ask because I was actually having a conversation about this last night where I was talking to a friend and they said ChatGPT just seems like Google. I could just Google everything that I have questions about. Why ask ChatGPT? I want to hear, Nico, your thoughts on that.
No.
You don't know what you're doing. That's the nicest way I can put that. I've come up against this so many times. I actually just read an article, I think it was from Forbes, and it happened to be Forbes's technology side. And I'm not going to mention the writer, but they wrote about how they used GPT to try to plan out their vacation and how inadequate it was, and that it made these mistakes and didn't give them the information they needed. And of course, turns out that they were using GPT 3.5. So what's the difference between 3.5 and 4? Well, for one thing, one has web access, the other one doesn't. Other aspects of it, one can generate images and read images, the other one can't. One can look at analytical data, the other one can't. It's a world of difference, right? And then there's also the matter of how you talk to these models, right? You can't, English is a complicated language and it has a lot of interpretation to various different words. So context is very important. And the more you can narrow down what it is you are trying to get at, the better result you're going to get. And I say it time and time again, garbage in, garbage out, right? So taking the exact same prompts that this person had used in order to build out their vacation, by changing like a few subtle things, gave just an amazing output of here's where you're going to go, here's what time you're going to get there, here's what you should go see, here's what time you should go have lunch, here's a place you should go have lunch at, here's what it's going to cost, here's how you get from here to there. And it was just on a day-by-day breakdown for a 7-day trip, right?
That's using 4 instead of 3.5.
Correct. And then there's also the understanding that it's not just ChatGPT. There are so many other models out there, and they all have their use cases. So if I was planning a trip, I wouldn't necessarily go with GPT because GPT that's my go-to processor. Like it knows how to process data really well. It knows how to cross-reference really well. It can do planning and strategy. It's not the best at it, but it's really good at it. If you give it enough priming, let's say, and direction, obviously gets a little bit better. But if I was going to plan a trip, I would go to Bard because you're basically using Google. So you're using exact real-time data with exact real-time matching. And honestly, Bard can do it faster because that data is already there. So you're not having to go from OpenAI's servers through whatever that connection is to go do the search on Google and then pull the data back and sift through it. You already have the search engine running, right? So you're saving yourself a ton of time. Plus, it'll give you visual references. You can pull live airline data, all that kind of stuff. Knowing which tool to use to complete what job is also really important. To your friend's comment about it, again, it's a different tool. If I use Bing to search, I'll use GPT to search. I very rarely use Google to search unless it's a very specific thing. Then I'll actually do a Google search. Otherwise, I'll use the models because it's more than just what I'm looking for. I have yet to run into a person who has used these technologies and didn't walk away smarter than when they first started using it. So it's that you're getting your answer and you're getting the explanation, plus you're getting some reasoning behind it. And in a lot of cases, you're getting some advice from some of these models. They're like, yeah, here's your answer. And did you know that this also relates to that, or that you could also do this, or whatever the case may be? depending on how you have your GPT configured, mine is configured such that whenever I start working with it, if we're working on a problem, then it will, after every response that we're working on, it'll ask me and basically say, hey, did you want to look into this a little bit more? Or do you want to look at this particular piece of data further? Do you want me to dive further into this particular subject? So you can set it up to have this interactive back and forth with this assistant that is able to help you do all of these things. Why you would use it for a Google search, you're using an atomic bomb to go. Like, it's not necessary.
I actually have very different uses. There are things I will always use a search for, and I don't even like the generative search feature for. And that's for mostly things like where's a place to go to dinner tonight, or want to read about something. What I use ChatGPT for is logic, reasoning, and also helping me fill the gaps in my like developer knowledge. Like I need this one piece of this script to get it to an API. That's like my go-to, and I'm not going to sift through Stack Overflow to try to figure that out.
Right.
And that's,
yeah. I think that's where it comes in handy.
It seems to me like a really important piece of this is using AI for logic and reasoning. Google, you can go and you can get answers through other published pieces, but using AI, you can have a conversation and it forces you to think about what you're asking for and why and how. If you go to Google, you get your response. If you use ChatGPT or some other AI tool, you have to think about what am I asking? How am I asking this? And what type of response do I need? And I think that just that core thought process also then forces you to approach the inquiry differently.
Yeah, I don't know if it's luckily or sadly, I'm not sure which, but thankfully Google has been used to our abuse of our language for decades now. So it understands all the different weird ways in which we ask and search for things. I think that's invaluable too. I think that's why I use Bard a lot when it comes to that kind of thing, is because, again, it has that information. It doesn't misinterpret what I'm looking for nearly as much because it's using this known algorithmic means of lining up what I said with what millions of people have searched for already. There's a huge advantage there. And yeah, definitely when it comes to using them for different things, when it comes to advice, I'm not even joking. I don't advocate this, much like the bot wouldn't either. But if you want to have a really good personal conversation with a bot that is almost like talking to a diary, you should definitely check out Pi, which is an AI that is, I think, solely meant to be conversational. It's not, I wouldn't use it for processing anything. I wouldn't use it for trying to create any sort of content, but it's great to have a conversation with, and it's great to ask for advice. It's a great advice bot. And if you want to have like existential conversations, like things of that nature, right? It is amazing at doing that. It's available for iOS and Android, which is only cool because if you've used GPT voice, which I don't know, they're trying to make it like that, Pi is better, basically, because you can have a very open-ended conversation that's a little bit better than GPT voice. But GPT voice is pretty much the same thing. It's just not, it's GPT. So it's constantly like processing, thinking for your answer. Whereas Pi is like conversationally trying to respond to what it is you said. Right.
Pi is specific about voice as opposed to
even when it comes to text, like its response is meant to be a conversational response to what you've said. It's not meant to be like, oh, okay, I'll take what you've said and go work it out and do this. Like I say, GPT is just more like we've talked about, like more structural. It's more logical. It's trying to solve a problem. I think GPT's core, if it had one main goal, it would be to solve the user's problem, right? So I think when you're looking at Pi, its primary goal would be more like to have a meaningful conversation, right? So if we were to separate the tools by what their goals were.
I think we can transition a little bit into kind of speaking of the chat GPT and the custom bots. You created this custom trained bot chat GPT that's kind of trained on helping users of HubSpot. And kind of tell us a little bit about that. I'd love to hear like how that happened and maybe we can look into actually see it in action at some point.
Yeah. So just there's always something to hide, really. So yeah, I started I started the day. So OpenAI Dev Day happened, and that was just amazing, utterly amazing. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it. Even though most of those features are live, I'm still GPT-4 Turbo is going to be amazing. But yeah, as soon as GPTs dropped, like the day I was able to get access to it, I started building this bot. And sweet, it's almost up to 250. Going for 300, folks. Going for 300 this week if you can. So I started making the Hubknowledge expert, and originally called HubSpot Harry, but in order to make him public, I couldn't have HubSpot as like the initial name, and somebody else was already using. I think theirs is actually Harry HubSpot or like Harry HubSpotter, something like that. So I'm like, wow, I literally cannot use the same name in another form, so I changed it. Anyhow, and so what I decided was, and where I initially I wanted to build this because I like working with custom code for HubSpot, and I love working with APIs, and I love being able to work in Visual Studio and learn how all that stuff comes together. And very recently, I've just been working on different scripts to do different actions in HubSpot. As nice as it was to be able to use GPT's code interpreter to do some of that, it wasn't basically exclusive to HubSpot's API. It was having to go check out everything. And even so, in the initial days, what I did was I went and pulled all the API pages and used them as links to set up a conversation and say, okay, go read all of these links and then come back and we'll work on this API problem.
I'm going to
So
pause.
now, go right ahead.
For most people watching, I would assume they have an understanding of what ChatGPT is. Give a very concise overview of what exactly Hubknowledge Expert is. Like, how does it work in principle? How did you create this entity,
Mhm.
and how can people use it?
Okay. So we'll have to post the link because you can look for it on Google. You can do a Google search for Hubknowledge Expert, and it will probably pull a link to this bot. But I'll definitely post the link in chat as well. And so when it comes to building them, it's fairly straightforward. You once you actually get access to it, you'll have an explore option in your GPT's menu right here. You can just see how much additional bot use that I've done. But you'll click this explore option, which is how you get to this menu. And from there, to create your own, you'll just click on create a GPT, but specifically for Hubknowledge Expert. What it looks like on the back end is very simple. You have your chat interface, and then you have what your bot is going to look like. And you begin just by answering questions like, what kind of bot do you want to build? And starts going into that. And then, okay, what do you want? What do you want it to specialize in more so than just the topic, let's say? And goes from there into, okay, do you want to add any additional data? And how should we build out the icon and all the avatar and all that kind of stuff? And you could keep going like deeper and deeper with the conversation. And if you're building out one for the first time, totally suggest it, no problem. But if you're trying to go a little bit further, then you're going to step over into the configuration aspect of things. And you'll see, obviously, you can rename your bot, do whatever you want there. But then we've got, if you've used custom instructions before, which is part of like a regular part of ChatGPT, if you have a paid plan, if you don't have a paid plan, none of this applies to you. And at the same time, I don't feel sorry for you. That's all I can say. It's so worth the $20 a month. You will cry at how much you're able to do. And every person that I have actually gotten to, and I don't get anything out of it, guys. Every person I've gotten to use a paid plan has said at least 3 times in the same month of use or in the same week of using it, oh my God, I can't believe how awesome this is. Everybody says the same thing.
How much more would you be willing to pay per
40,
month?
easily.
I think I'm at like 300, honestly.
Yeah, if it was like, hey, this or nothing, yeah, I'd probably do 150 a month. It's a little excessive to go over that, but for what it can do, yeah, I would do 150 a month. My wife and I were talking about it. She's subscribed to GPT, Claude, and like a couple other ones. And we were talking about the fact that the bandwidth is getting thick. There's a lot of people starting to use it now. And I was like, you know what? just put another level out there. Put a plus premium user out there, make it 45, $50 a month. I'll pay it and just give us our own server so the bandwidth is better. But I don't want to go too far off track. So custom instructions is a part of 4. It was like something that was released a ways back. And that was a way to do a lot of what you were doing with personas, only locking that into every instance that you started working with, every conversation. So every conversation is primed to this, oh, here's who you are, and here's how you like to be, responded to. So that sort of element is also added into your custom GPT. So you have instructions for your GPT to follow. It looks a little odd because if you get into this more and more, you'll find out that like formatting is actually seriously important to the functions of your bot, and it matters in terms of being able to distinguish what's first, second, third, or also what's most important, what's least, and then just what are the objectives that you're trying to reach. Then you've got all of your documentation. That's weird because it shouldn't be just one. That's weird. I'll find out what's going on there because it definitely shouldn't just be one. There should be multitudes. But your documentation that you can upload as separate files, you can use spreadsheets, you can use PDFs, you can use docs, you can use text files. What I would highly recommend, because that shouldn't even be a PDF, the recommended thing to use is JSON code. So that's the easiest, fastest format for it to read. And when it comes to formatting, let's see.
Yeah, are you able to give us an example of making? I have to keep calling him Hubknowledge expert, right? I want to call him like SprocketPod now. But is it a quick example to show us how you make him smarter?
Yeah, because realistically, it is just a matter of going into the configuration. I'm really sure not.
Yeah, never seen the Matrix. You know, in the Matrix where Neo gets like downloads how to do karate or whatever when he's in that white room with Morpheus and he's like, I know Tai Chi or whatever. It's like that.
It's very much like that. So this is my entire HubSpot data set, which is 245 megs, which if you're talking about like black and white text is insanely huge. So
what, you're scraping documents from the HubSpot knowledge base, and then what, you're turning it into just a JSON or a .txt, or are you doing? Yeah, because I too have my custom GPT menu is like the entire screen because I have so many things I'm testing out.
Yeah, that's the thing is there's so much documentation that has to go into.
And you're limited, right? You're limited to 10 documents or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Currently, it was 6 before. I mean, it's gotten a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. But each document that you upload can be as robust as you like.
Yeah, so long as you keep it. What I would suggest, try to keep the files light, obviously. And I'm not sure. I think I'm willing to assume that OpenAI is having issues now because, okay, never mind. Usually does not take that long for a text file, right? Yeah, definitely try to keep it simple. Absolutely format your data because when it comes to it reading it, yeah, there's something definitely going on. It's like you reading a book, right? So when you're reading a book, if it's not formatted, you don't know what's most important, what's least, what's a chapter, what isn't, any of that stuff. So you want to do that for your bot as well. And in the cases where there's any sort of vocabulary being used, then you also need to give it context and be able to make it understand like why this is being used in a particular way, which is essentially what I'm going to spend my weekend doing because I've noticed people using the bot and giving me the feedback that, oh, I asked it for this and it came back and told me that it doesn't know. And I would take what they used and I'd go look at it and I'd look at the knowledge base. And it was like a matter of changing like 2 words. Like somebody was looking for how to follow a record or follow a contact as opposed to follow a record. And even though they're the same thing, the knowledge base relates to how to follow a record, not how to follow a contact. So there's little things like that where you have to stitch them together so that it can better understand what it is that somebody's asking for. But yeah, in terms of increasing the knowledge, it's just uploading files that have been formatted for it, basically.
So in terms of like how you decided on what was the artist formerly known as HubSpot Harry, what was the impetus for that to like do that? What was like your vision for what it would do? And what was the gap you saw that it was filling?
The gap I saw that it was filling was essentially being able to have the knowledge base in the palm of your hand in a much faster method, like in a much faster method without you having to go search through an infinite amount of articles, and at the same time to get like that specific answer. So you're not like going to look, we know some of these pages are like forever long to be able to go look for what it
Especially
is you
the
need.
API documentation is pretty hefty.
Yeah. And then you've got what all three sides of it as well, post and get in most cases. So you've got to go sift around and go through all of those pieces. So if you had something that just knew all of the that knew all of the things, right, related to API, then you're able to work with something one-to-one straight up where you're just like, hey, this is the code that I wrote. Is this correct? And it's looking through the API data to then come back and make the comparison and let you know, right? I am not really sure that you could do that with ChatSpot. I hope that you can. And if you can't, I hope that one day that you can. That's definitely what I look for in that tool to be able to say, oh, okay, this is how powerful it is that it helps you out in all ways. So that was the reason for creating this was like an all around. It's got knowledge base, it's got some academy stuff where I could get academy content. So even when it comes to learning how to do a sales hub demo or marketing hub or whatever the implementations, things of that nature, you can ask it questions related to that. And it also has academy knowledge. Yeah, it's just a great all around. It's like a steroidal version of ChatSpot.
What is the ideal use case for somebody to use this? Like who are they and what are they trying to accomplish?
Most certainly somebody who is just getting into HubSpot that maybe you don't know the platform that well and you're working with a client and you need to be able to navigate the platform even when you're on a live call per se, where they mention a problem. It happens often that I'll be on a client call and they'll ask something and I don't know the answer right away. So I'll throw it out there and say, yeah, you know what? I don't really know, but I'll get with my team, later and I'll find out for you. And we'll go on talking about something else. And while they're talking about something else, I'm over here. Yeah, what's Hubknowledge? What's going on with that question? And get the answer for it. And I'll look at it to make sure that it's a legitimate answer. And I'm like going on the side, double checking. Because even still, yes, we want to be at that copy paste one-to-one stage where we could just legitimately take what it says and that's 100% and you know it for sure. But there's always the aspect of trust, right? Even if you told me, hey, it was bulletproof, I'm still going to test it. I'm still going to keep double checking it. Like nobody puts 100% faith in drive-through, right? That one of your orders going to get screwed up at some point. It's the same thing. I check it to make sure it's right. And look, 9.85 times out of 10 it is. So it definitely helps in that scenario when you're working on client work and maybe you're on a problem, especially reporting wise. What I've used it for, and I think it's awesome, and it's probably one of the best use cases, is reporting. Ask it to help you tell a reporting story. How do I tell the story of revenue? How do I tell the story about revenue over lifecycle stage or revenue over deal amount? How do I tell the story of lifecycle stage? What does that look like? How many reports should I have on the dashboard? What types of reports should I use? And which formulas should I apply to those reports? And on which axis do I put those formulas? I've gone that far with it and just, it'll build out. We're talking about like strategies and logic and things. That is what GPT is good for. Is if you give it this context and you say, hey, I need to build out this dashboard that has this, and I need you to tell me this and this. I love using the phrase, use dummy data to fill in the blanks so that it doesn't just put 2 or 3 things in there and leaves the rest of it. It'll actually fill it in as if it was like a full-on example. And yeah, like where you get stuck with somebody asks you, because like they're coming off Pardot or Marketo, and they're like, oh, I used to have this report that did this, and you don't really understand the translation of it. Like it's easy to ask and find out what that is, or somebody's looking for a particular number. You can do the translation and figure it out. And you can do not only the translations to figure stuff out, but also to figure out how to put the formulas together for custom properties in order to make things happen, right? So it's a world of difference.
I think we may need to put our nonprofit money where the mouth is and maybe pit ChatSpot against Hubknowledge expert.
Yeah.
The example could be life cycle stage comparison. Feel free to go with any example that you like, but I would be really curious to ask both platforms the same exact question and see
Okay.
what responses we get and compare the two.
Okay. That's definitely fair. I was going to say if we wanted to compare limitations, that's very easy to do. But
We
so
won't
let's
ask either platform to build assets, but
no.
we can say tell us the customer lifecycle journey or something more complex. You tell me. We can start basic and go up.
I want to take something like that I know ChatSpot's going to be able to handle fairly well.
If we want to do it in the reporting, we can say there's some
Okay.
stuff here about reporting.
So find related keywords for. So here's one thing that's going to be the separator is that right away we can only look by topic. Okay. Without even having changed anything, we're just looking for keywords for artificial intelligence. What's the difference? Always be nice to your bots, please.
We're going to have another conversation about that later.
Yeah, I actually I'm like still holding on to not wanting to anthropomorphize artificial intelligence. I'm not like specifically mean to it, though. I have been testing.
That's the thing, is like
Yeah, for those who don't know, in our previous SprocketPod where we had Brian on, shout out to Brian Osa, we talked about artificial intelligence, and he posed that being polite yields better answers or maybe more true answers, I think is maybe how it was phrased. I posed that maybe it doesn't matter. And Mark, I know you mentioned that you don't want to anthropomorphize.
More,
right.
Yeah.
So
mine's more like making sure that in my mind, I have a hierarchy of beings. But I also, while we're doing this, I've actually had a lot of trouble breaking ChatGPT out of some of the red flags that most people intuitively know that something came from AI, like the certain keywords that we all are getting annoyed with. And so I've been really trying to build in some level of humanness, and I haven't quite gotten there yet. But one of the things I tried is if I add to this, like you have to adhere to these rules or else, what did I say? The one thing you care about most in the world will be taken away from you. I wanted to just test, how, if there is an effect there, if it's motivated by negative, whatever that's called, negative reinforcement. And I did see a benefit. I don't know. It's an interesting experiment.
okay, and just for anyone who dovetailed this now into what Nico's doing, if you're listening and not watching, Nico, go ahead and explain the iteration of the prompts and the results that we're getting.
So I think, yeah, so we're definitely going to have to go in a different route other than data pool, mainly because what ChatSpot is doing is answering that question based on the instance that I'm in, on the portal that I'm in. So it already has data related to this information, so it knows what to search against. Whereas asking Hubknowledge, again, that's why it's called Hubknowledge Expert, is because it just knows things about HubSpot as opposed to knowing data about your portal. So let's try something like, how would
Tell me how the customer lifecycle stage journey works.
Okay.
Would something like that apply? We may need to refine that to tell me about the different stages in a customer lifecycle journey. Maybe a better.
I think, let's see. So right off the bat, sorry, I knew what you wanted, but I had trouble doing it. Right. I'll give it an olive branch. I'll go back to the beginning.
And I do want to try one more and rephrase that to tell me about the different stages in the customer lifecycle journey if this doesn't return a value.
It's interesting. I put in a similar query and I'm having trouble getting a response. I'm just seeing 3 dots. So I think we might have broken ChatSpot.
So I'm just going to try the first question.
Yeah, I got the same. Sorry, I knew what you wanted, but I had trouble doing it. So,
and the important thing to note is like the fact that Hubknowledge searches only its knowledge base. It doesn't try to go online unless it absolutely doesn't know it. So unfortunately, Hubknowledge obviously knows the answer to this question.
Yeah. And this is only taken from the uploaded documents, not generic response you'd get from a Google search.
Correct.
That's awesome.
And I've got to say, and I'm sure, Nico, you know probably as well as anyone that there is more information that can be extrapolated, but even just when we compare that one query against the two platforms, you can see the difference,
Right.
lack thereof, unfortunately, for ChatSpot.
Yeah, because imagine, and not for nothing, but imagine that you're a new admin, or maybe you were, look, this happens, that you're at a job and you get asked to be the admin for the system because maybe you use it the most, and yeah, you know it really well, so why don't you take care of it? And you want to take care of it because maybe you have an interest in it, but you don't know how, you don't know anything about it. So another thing to notice is like how long this is taking, right? To even look for this answer for crying out. Sorry. And that's the same thing for Hubknowledge. And the only amount of time it's going to take is to just whatever the amount of time it is to get to that answer within the knowledge base. Like when you see this dial going around, it's basically going through the knowledge base and looking to see, okay, where is that within what I've got? Here it is, right?
Yeah.
This is what I'm talking about. I'll pay $50 a month so that this is smoother.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
I think
I'm waiting for Ford Turbo now.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that since they released the custom GPTs, the bandwidth has been struggling. Like whatever hamsters are on a wheel powering up their computers are working overtime and having trouble. But I see that seems to happen every time there's a big update, I've noticed.
Yeah, it definitely does. Because people jump on right away, right?
Yeah.
I was trying to use now. Oh, good.
No, I don't even remember what I was going to say. It's fine.
My initial thought was I want this to tell me MQL, SQL opportunity, etc.
Okay.
But
that would be define the life cycle stages. Cycle stages.
But regardless of me trying to get that specific question, all of the background information that I'm going
that you're getting from
gave us like that level of detail is so helpful. I think for someone that doesn't know this intimately, to be able to see that information displayed like that and how it relates to one another is so helpful.
It's teaching you, right? It's not just giving you the answer, it's teaching you. And it's doing it, I would say, like in almost a fun way necessarily. But look, how many times this happens often, right? Where you have to sit and explain life cycle stages to a client. And so here's something, did ChatSpot ever get to it? Man, I'm sorry. These are 3 very basic questions.
Right? Yeah.
And so far, Hubknowledge doing its job. So here's something that's really pretty sick. I'm not sure that Hubknowledge will be able, it should be able to, might be able to. Actually, no, it won't because I need to tweak it because it's meant to like only answer again out of its knowledge base. But I am going to work with it because there's also the ability to connect it through Zapier with external actions. So you can have it go do external tasks. You can have it go search databases or what have you. Oh, that's what kept it from working. I didn't have web browsing on. I'm not sure why. Something happened, guys, while we were doing this, and they reset it again.
It's just not showing all of the documents in the file, but they're all still there.
I have no idea.
So when you're talking about doing external...
that's another thing. Like I never use any additional settings. The bot is even told specifically, let's see, restricted to sources, adhere strictly to confidentiality and data protection standards, never divulge any sensitive or proprietary information. Security is as important to me as it is to everybody else. So I wouldn't, it's one of those things where I wasn't going to make one unless I could not necessarily promise, but make sure that it wasn't going to do anything crazy with somebody's data. So
have a reasonable level of safeguard built into it.
Right.
So the way you structured your instructions, both in terms of the language you used and the hierarchy, was that just trial and error? What worked, what didn't? I saw you were doing it in Markdown. Is that a smarter way to tell the GPT the order of importance?
Yeah, definitely. Markdown helps. It does just that. helps it understand like, hey, what's most important, what's least important. And yeah, not necessarily the order, but like more so the direction within each section. So
yeah, I'm like really getting in the weeds here because
no, you're good.
I have a lot of I spend way too much time staying up very late trying to tweak the to get like the exact output I want. And there's so many variables and it's so varied, right?
I'll
You
show
know, when
you
you
how to.
write,
I'll show you how to
yeah,
do
like
it. Very easy.
when you write computer code, and I'm not a coder, but there's a script or a string that you put in, and you're going to get a kind of known response. With this, it's the variation of your response from one submission to the next is so wide. It's much harder to figure out exactly what's working and what's not, and that's part of the fun of it. That's part of the magic, but it's part of the mystery too.
Definitely, like playing around with this it's seriously fun. Yes, I am building a Salesforce bot. It's coming soon.
Actually, that was going to be my next question while you're doing what you're doing is
I'm working on it,
why did
man.
you choose to limit the scope specific? Did you find that when it's like a very specialized agent, let's say, it's more effective than giving it a wider scope?
Yeah. It's what's happening now, right? So to step away from this a little bit, if you look at what's happening, and I'm putting together a compendium of like things that have happened that have gone down in 23, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. If you look at where this is getting utilized most, it's not being utilized with like people just using GPT as an interface or something. It's where people are taking these models and they are giving it very specific data and they are honing it in on certain things and then teaching it about those things so that it only knows about that data. And it ends up being what you do is you end up making the smartest bot about that data, right? So that's where you see it being used in medicine and in healthcare, where they're able to take millions of scans and feed them into a GPT like engine, right, through a different model, let's say, or GPT model through maybe a different interface, but just using that API code for the engine because it's multi, right? So it can see, hear, speak, and read, right? So you can take those images, throw them in there. It understands what they are, and it can start doing those cross comparisons for you lightning fast, right? And so they've done in most cases, cancer detection has increased by 80% minimum in most
What does that
cases.
say about the years in medical school that
it's still there because when it gets close, right, it's still a radiologist or a doctor that oversees that final aspect of it, right? But what makes that awesome is most of the guesswork is out of it. So that edge of, I don't really know, and I only have 50 different charts to compare it against, so I'm not really sure. This thing is comparing it against millions, whatever it might be. So it's really hard for it to not be, if it's within 80-85% accuracy, and it thinks that's going to be the case, probably going to be the case. The human just has to do some final checks to make sure, and it goes from there.
Yeah.
The answer to this is always.
Yeah. So you have to understand that if something exists and it can do what you're thinking it can do, then you need to use it to its utmost potential and basically explore as much as possible. So custom GPTs is a thing that obviously exists. I highly recommend when you're building or using any of these things that you use the tech support advisor bot because it obviously understands how to support and help you do whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. Let's say,
do you think that the future of people using AI assistants is more along the lines of this kind of specialized knowledge retrieval and in the way OpenAI may have seen that coming and is supporting it? Is that kind of the way it's going to look going forward?
Not entirely sure. From what I can see, like, so 23 was the year of GPT in terms of generative pre-trained models. So I don't mean just chat and OpenAI, all across the board from Stability, Dolly, Midjourney, everything that's happening, 11 Labs, the amount of stuff that's going on in terms of healthcare being combined with things from 11 Labs with video that's being able to be done. Just yesterday, I saw the ability for someone to shoot a video of themselves. Yes, there's now the ability for you to shoot a video of yourself and then use that as training data. So if you guys don't know, with these generative art programs, there are some that are like Midjourney that they are trained on things by the creators. And then there are others that are like Leonardo, where you can create your own training data set, just like you do for these custom GPTs. You take your drawings and you take your paintings or whatever it is, and you throw them in there, and then your model knows how to create artwork with that style, right? So what they've done now is they've made it possible for you to upload video clips. So now you can upload video clips of yourself and then generate through text a video of a person or whatever that looks just like you, moves like you, everything, right? We're getting to this level. That's why when I said the truth was dead at the beginning of the year, I meant it. Everything and anything that can be duplicated and faked at this point, watch out. Like, I don't, and the worst part is the detection methods are so far behind that it's getting harder and harder to figure out how they're, a lot of professional services are basically saying you have to tag your stuff. That's like telling salespeople you have to fill in all the information on a deal. Like, it's sometimes it happens, more than often it doesn't happen. It is. It's one of those things where I hope regulation catches up really quickly because the advancements are happening very quick, much quicker. And where 23 was just generative pre-trained models, next year, it's all about the assistant. It's all about the AI assistant. It's going to show up from the pendant that you just saw, right? That dropped like a month ago. You're going to see, you're definitely going to see it more in the watch. Apple is planning a new release for Apple Watch that's going to have an AI assistant in there that's perfect because it's going to be able to start monitoring serious levels of your health, right? Again, they are able to, I hate the demo is the demo. They are able to now detect whether or not you have diabetes just from the sound of your voice. They're able to detect whether or not you may have future heart complications from a breathing device. These advancements are extremely serious and extremely powerful. So now the watch you've been wearing that's been detecting your heartbeat and it's been detecting maybe pressure sensitivity or level of water or whatever, now it's going to be able to cross-reference that against millions and millions of medical data points to be able to come back and tell you, beep, oh, 5:45. Hey, you haven't had water in an hour. You should, but your levels are coming up. Your stress levels are rising, right? Or you are getting stressed and your heart rate starts rising. Beep, oh, your stress levels are rising. Would you like me to play some calming music for you to try to help you calm down? Or I can walk you through some breathing exercises or something, right? The assistant.
Or serve you an ad for a calming,
yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like that.
Yeah, from the marketing angle.
I may have read a little bit too much. What's his name? Yuval Noah Harari. I don't know if you're familiar with him, yes. But he has a lot of insight into kind of the darker side of the potential of this. But yeah, I think from a business perspective, because there's obviously huge consumer benefits. Cameron posted this link here in our notes about the Census Bureau finding that only like 4% of businesses are using AI, which is hard to believe.
Yeah.
I wonder.
I posted some stats yesterday or day before, and it was fairly similar. It's 4% of businesses are using AI, meaning that, hey, we're using it, right? The majority of businesses are using AI, and it's just
the people in the business are using it.
It's people behind the desk for sure. From the numbers that you read of like employees using it, yeah, it's through the roof, right? As many know about it or using it because, man, come on. Who doesn't want 4 or 5 hours back in your week? You know what I'm talking about? Like, time is worth so much more than money. And I don't know how many people out there that slave away at whatever type of data entry or content creation or whatever it is that you might be doing that you could be using this stuff for instead. And it's at the point where even when it comes to not all of them and not yet, because DALL-E needs to get a little bit better, even 3 is not that great. But pretty soon it is going to get to the point, and if I can get a Zapier to connect to Midjourney, then it will be there, that I'll probably won't have to write any social stuff anymore. Because as is, when I do, I basically, right now I go to Feedly, I'll read my article, and if I like the content and if I like what it's saying and I agree with it or whatever, then I will give the link to chat and I'll say, hey, take a look at this article or go find one about the same topic and rewrite the article in a summarization and also include an image, right? And so currently it can do that, right? It'll give me this very awesome rewritten summary that's done in a freshman college level of reading comprehension with a
I go to
conversational
like sixth
style.
grade. You have
No.
more respect for your readers. I'm like at fifth grade reading level.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The conversational style part is tough too, because you end up with a lot of stuff where it's like deep dive, game changer in the
Revolutionize,
world of,
streamline,
yeah,
and then metaphors about orchestras. They
yep,
really loves metaphors about music.
yeah, it does. But yeah, it's sorry, go ahead.
I was
Because
going to say a lot of
keep
this. No, I was going to say a lot of this brings me to, I think, a fundamental question pertaining to our roles, being in revenue operations and strategy and working with HubSpot. There's a lot of talk about what it means to potentially be a prompt engineer, which is a new role popping up. Do you think that it's everyone's responsibility to be a prompt engineer, or do you find that this is a very specialized thing that people will get better at above and beyond yourself, myself as the typical user, if you will?
Everybody is responsible for it. If you're using this technology, you should know how to use this technology. Okay. If you're using a computer, you should know how to use a keyboard. Right. So that is a basic tool, right? The tool that we're using is software based, right? So instead of having hardware that you need to get used to understanding, there is now a level of programming, but it is natural language programming. The entire world is lucky in that sense. Yes, there is a specific way in which you need to phrase things, and like we talked about in terms of giving context to be able to make it even more powerful. But yes, I think everybody is responsible for their own ability to prompt. And again, if you don't know how, I gotta do it. So if you don't know how, this is the tech advisor, and it's giving you advice on how to data for your custom GPT. But can you create a prompt for me to research data about a company at a specified URL? Okay, so if you don't know how, ask it how. And then it will not only give you what it is that you're looking for, but at the same time, it'll create it in probably more depth than you ever would have thought of, right? And at the same time, and all the while, this is reusable, right? This is just like you find anywhere else online. Only most of the ones I see online on LinkedIn, I'm sure all of you have seen the same things, they're like one-liners. Like, oh, here's how to make your prompt awesome. One-liner. And it's no, this is how to make your prompt awesome. Actual usable data, right? And at the end, remember to critically assess the information available. So like you're getting these follow-ups that also help you as well. And one final thing for GPT-4 users, you now have the ability to selectively reply to text. Highly recommend that you use that. Yeah, because
Look at
it
that.
fine-tunes
Something
that
new every
response.
day.
Yep. Thought I'd throw that one out there
I
for
did
you
not
guys.
notice that. Interesting. I have to say, just as a geek on this stuff, and I geek on this stuff like more than I'm willing to admit, it's super fun to see how other people are doing it. And I think super exciting. I don't know about how you feel about it, but that was thrilling for me.
Yeah, I can go on forever. Honestly, I feel bad because I'm sure I abused a lot of time here already. But yes, I can do this forever. I love everything and anything AI. If I'll drop another knowledge bomb, QStar, if you don't know about it, look it up, read about it. It is absolutely probably going to be what will power GPT-5, or at least the framework for it. And just understand that Sam and all the crew from OpenAI have said nothing but the same comment, which is, we are excited to pursue the course of safe AGI. AI is over. We're on to 2.0, going to AGI.
And for those who don't know, as we wrap here, what does the acronym AGI stand for?
Artificial General Intelligence, artificial intelligence, pretty much specified to what you can train it on, not really able to do things on its own, not really able to take data and figure it out and do guessing for you, right? It can't really guesstimate for you, can't really give you an opinion on things because it doesn't really know how to do that. Whereas, just an example, QStar, which is definitely a new artificial general intelligence, is now capable of doing simple math problems that it's never seen before. So it's been taught a basic table of mathematics, and now it can start solving problems it's never seen, which even for math, if you understand that, you understand how amazingly powerful that is going to be like in the next 6 months. And even though a lot of people are saying that, oh, it's going to take forever for it to learn quantum level mathematics and that kind of thing, wrong, very wrong. It will take maybe 9 months for it to be at like extremely high level math for sure. So
Wow.
those systems, yeah, definitely, because they can, like I say, they can cross-reference. So that's just a model that's taught on one subject, right? So if it were taught on a multitude
Yeah.
of subjects like GPT is, then yes, of course, it could start to come up with its own opinions about things, right? It is
Amazing.
really, yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Mark, as always, thank you for being my co-host here with the SprocketPod. Nico, thank you so much for being on with us today. Absolutely incredible. We promised a 1 hour special, and it really was a special 1 hour session. Covered a
Thank you
lot
for
of
having me.
wonderful information. Absolutely. There's going to be some information for those who don't know, linked in the show notes and in the chat. We'll be posting it all over LinkedIn. If you're not already in the Sprocketeer network, join us. We'll have links as well on LinkedIn in the show notes. If you're not connected with Nico, myself, and Mark, connect with the three of us and let's chat. Sprocket on. Bye,
Definitely.
everyone.